Good morning, everybody. Today we are examining some lessons or some things that we can take away from Isaiah chapter 29. And, there's a lot of things that are found here in this chapter that we could pull from to draw our lessons or our conclusions from the chapter. One of the things that I noticed was there were a number of uh, different parallels that were given within the chapter. And that's kind of what I want to hone in on right now. Some of the pictures that are drawn with some of the statements that are made. And I picked out 3 of them this morning. There's more that we could look at and more that we could see. But just as things that I found as interesting visualizations that Isaiah uses for what is going on. The first one is found in verse number 8, and God here is talking through Isaiah about the enemies that Jerusalem is going to face, that they're going to be as dust, and that there's going to be this great multitude of them, and so on and so forth. But when you get to verse 8, it says, "It shall even be as when a hungry man dreams and looks, he eats, and look, he eats, but he awakes, and his soul is still empty. Or as when a thirsty man dreams, and look, he drinks, but he awakes, and indeed he is faint, and his soul still craves. So shall the multitude of all the nations shall be who fight against Mount Zion." He says those who fight against the people of Judah are going to be like those who go to sleep hungry or thirsty. And in their dream, they eat or they drink. And yet, just because they did that in their dream doesn't mean that when they wake up, they're satiated, that they're full, they're not hungry or thirsty anymore. In other words, they are going to be those that are going to not be filled before the task is complete. And so you have this picture of the dream where you dream that you're doing something, but it didn't actually transpire. And so it is going to be with the people who fight against Mount Zion. They're going to be like those who are going to feel unfulfilled so far, because they are going to dream that they have had, or it's going to be like they've dreamt that they've had something that they haven't actually had yet. And so they're going to be driven as well, because they are not going to be full. And that's the point that he's trying to make, is that they are going to be a devouring fire. They are going to be all kinds of relentless pursuit of the people, because they will not feel full. They will not ever be satiated with what they have accomplished to this point. The second one is down just a couple of verses later in verses 10 and 11, where God is talking about the impacts on the people of Judah of the messages that he is giving and of the things that are going on, especially as time gets closer, where judgment is coming upon them. And he says in verse number 10, "For the Lord has poured out on you the spirit of deep sleep, and has closed your eyes, namely the prophets, and covered your heads, namely the seers. The whole vision has become to you like the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one who is literate, saying, 'Read this, please.' And he says, 'I cannot, for it is sealed.' And the book is delivered to one who is illiterate, saying, 'Read this, please.' And he says, 'I am not literate.'" And therefore, he talks about in verse 13, he uses the statement that Jesus uses in Matthew 15, that this people draw nigh to me with their mouth and they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. God uses the illustration here of an individual who has a book that has been sealed shut. And he takes it to somebody who is supposed to be able to read it. And he says, "I can't, because it's closed and I can't read a sealed document." And so he takes it to somebody that can't read, and they say, "I can't read." He says this is the picture of the prophets and the seers. He says there is coming a point where there will be a spirit poured out on you that will be of a deep sleep. In other words, it doesn't matter what I say, and I will have already said everything that I can say to you, everything that I need to say to you, and you still aren't going to change, and there's not going to be anybody left to help you. You get to the days of Jeremiah, and in many ways this particular statement comes to pass as Jeremiah gives warning after warning, and he continues to present the things of God's word. But it's like he's talking to a bunch of sleeping people, because they do not listen, they do not hear, they actively work against him, they will not hearken to his words, and there comes the time when the book is closed. God has said all he's going to say, he's given the warnings he's going to give, and as much as he's tried, they have not changed, and so it's done, it's set. Nothing more is going to be forthcoming and going to be available. The third picture is found in verse number 16, and actually backing up to verse number 15 as well. He says, "Woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel far from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, who say, 'Who sees us, and who knows us?' Surely you have things turned around. Shall the potter be esteemed as the clay? For shall the thing made say of him who made it, he did not make me? Or shall the thing formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding?" God is talking here about those who will say that, or believe that they can hide from God, that God doesn't know what they are doing, or that God doesn't care about what they're undertaking. And he says, do you really think that the potter should be esteemed from the clay? In other words, that the clay has the right to say to the potter that the potter doesn't know what is going on, or that the potter doesn't understand what is being made or what has been formed and how it works. He's trying to illustrate just how foolish it is for us to think that God doesn't know, for us to think that God isn't paying attention, that God created something that he did not understand when he created man. God knew exactly what man was going to be. He knew exactly what man was going to do and how man was going to do it. When you see these things, it is a parallel, it is a picture of the ridiculousness of believing that God does not know what man is doing, or that he doesn't want to know what man is doing. We are his creation. We are made with a purpose. Those are some of the things that I pulled out of chapter 29, and there's a lot more that we could talk about, but we don't have time to this morning. Certainly look forward to seeing and hearing what you find and what things you saw that were piquing your interest in certain areas as you've examined chapter 29. I hope you have a good day, and tomorrow we will look at the text of chapter 30.